everyone, and welcome back to the ThatOneCatholic podcast. I am Vanessa, your host, also known as ThatOneCatholic Girl. And as always, I am thrilled to be your guide through our journey of faith and understanding. In our last session, we grappled with the profound issue of the problem of evil, a challenging but an essential subject that aids in the deepening of our faith. Now, before we begin, I just want to say the topic of today is going to take a lot of time and a lot of dedication to understanding. And also, there's some big words in this podcast that I may struggle to pronounce. So if I pronounce them incorrectly, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. But please bear with me as I attempt to pronounce them in the best way that I can. But today we are set to explore another pivotal topic in our faith journey, the cosmological argument. This philosophical argument for the existence of God has been at the center of theological and philosophical discourses for centuries. It brings together theology and the natural sciences in a unique blend that ignites our intellect and feeds our spiritual curiosity. So, whether you've come across a cosmological argument in your faith journey before, or it's an entirely new concept for you, there is a wealth of understanding and insight to be gained from examining it. Today, we will dive deep into its intricacies, observe its evolution, and discover its significance in the context of Catholic theology. And of course, we'll be confronting the counter-arguments and observing how the cosmological argument stands firm in the face of criticism. In the grand tradition of the Catholic faith, let's walk this path of inquiry together, exploring, questioning, and growing in our understanding. No matter where you are in your faith journey, the exploration of the cosmological argument promises to deepen our appreciation of the beautiful tapestry of belief that is Catholicism. So let's delve into this captivating topic together. At its core, the cosmological argument is a philosophical stance that asserts the existence of God based on observable phenomena in the universe. It is grounded in the fundamental principles of causality and contingency, which state that everything that exists or happens must have a cause or a reason. There are various forms of the cosmological argument, but all essentially revolve around the concept that the existence of the universe necessitates the existence of a first cause, or a necessary being, that set everything into motion. The first cause, or necessary being, is then identified as God. Let's break it down further. The first form is often referred to as the argument from motion or change, popularly attributed to St. Thomas Aquinas. It suggests that since things in our world are in a state of motion or change, and since nothing can move or change itself, there must be a first mover that initiated the motion or change. The second form, the argument from causation, posits that because nothing can cause itself, and because an infinite regress of causes is deemed impossible, then there must be a first cause, or an uncaused cause, that started the chain of causation. The third form, known as the argument from contingency, suggests that because everything in our universe is contingent, it might not have existed. There must be a necessary being whose existence is not contingent on anything else, and which causes the existence of all contingent beings. In summary, the cosmological argument is a classic demonstration of how observations about our universe can lead us to infer the existence of a transcendent necessary being, a being we understand as God. The roots of the cosmological argument trace back to the philosophical traditions of ancient Greece, most notably to the works of the philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle, in his book Metaphysics, posited the idea of a prime mover, an unmoved mover that set the celestial bodies in motion. This prime mover, according to Aristotle, is eternal, unchanging, and immaterial. While Aristotle didn't explicitly identify the prime mover as God, this concept was instrumental in the development of subsequent forms of the cosmological argument. So let's fast forward to the Middle Ages. The cosmological argument was substantially expanded and refined by St. Thomas Aquinas, a Dominican friar and theologian. In his work, the Summa Theologica, Aquinas formulated his famous 5 ways to demonstrate God's existence. Among these, the first 3 ways are essentially different versions of the cosmological argument: the argument from motion, from efficient causes, and from possibility and necessity. Aquinas' first way, inspired by Aristotle's idea of the prime mover, argues that the observable motion in the universe cannot be due to chance, but must be traced back to a first mover, set into motion by no other than itself. The second way posits a first cause in the chain of causes and effects we see around us. The third way takes a slightly different approach, arguing from the contingency of the universe for the existence of a necessary being upon which all else depends. The influence of Aristotle and Aquinas in shaping the cosmological argument cannot be understated. Their philosophical and theological insights provided a robust intellectual foundation for the argument, which continues to be a significant aspect of the discourse on the existence of God even today. The concept of causality plays a central role in the cosmological argument. In essence, the cosmological argument is an argument from causality. It starts with the most basic observable features of the universe, that things happen, change, or exist, and asks, what could cause this phenomena? The cosmological argument asserts that everything that happens or exists must have a cause. Aquinas' version of the cosmological argument used different aspects of causality. The argument from efficient causes, the second way, is grounded in the idea that nothing brings itself into being. In other words, for everything that exists or occurs, there is a cause, or an efficient cause, in the terminology of Aquinas, outside of it. However, this chain of causes and effects cannot go back infinitely. There must be a first cause that started everything, an uncaused cause, that itself requires no cause, and this Aquinas identifies as God. The argument for motion, the first way, can be seen as an argument from the causality of change. Things move or change because something else moves or changes them. But this chain of movers cannot be infinite. There must be a first mover that is not moved by anything else. The third way, the argument from contingency, is based on a different kind of causality, the existential causality. Some beings exist, but they might not have. Their existence is contingent on something else. Therefore, there must be a necessary being whose existence is not contingent but self-caused. A being that necessarily exists and causes the existence of other entities. All these variations of the cosmological argument point towards the existence of a first cause or prime mover, traditionally understood as God, underpinning the reality of our universe. The concept of causality, therefore, is deeply intertwined with the cosmological argument for God's existence. The Kalam cosmological argument, though rooted in Islamic philosophy, has been widely discussed in the context of Christian apologetics, particularly in the work of philosopher William Lane Craig. This version of the cosmological argument, unlike some of the others, is concerned primarily with the concept of the universe having a beginning. The Kalam cosmological argument can be broken down into several key premises and a conclusion. The first premise is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. This is a common intuition. We don't see things popping into existence from nothing in our everyday experience. Now, the second premise is that the universe began to exist. This is supported both philosophically by arguments that actual infinites cannot exist in reality, and scientifically by evidence such as the Big Bang Theory and the second law of thermodynamics. If both these premises are accepted, then the conclusion logically follows. Therefore, the universe has a cause. This cause, by nature being the originator of the universe, must transcend space and time, and be enormously powerful and highly ordered, and is usually identified with God. The cosmological argument differs from the traditional cosmological arguments of philosophers like Aristotle and Aquinas, as it does not rely on the existence of a currently occurring series of causally linked events, but instead argues from the beginning of the universe to the existence of a first cause. This focus on the beginning of the universe and the philosophical and scientific implications of this event is the key characteristic of the Kalam cosmological argument. The Thomistic cosmological argument, named after its originator, St. Thomas Aquinas, is a form of the cosmological argument that focuses not on the temporal being of the universe, but on the hierarchical, I can't say that word for whatever reason, nature of causation. For Aquinas, the existence of a first cause, or an unmoved mover, can be deduced from the observing the nature of causality in the world around us. So Aquinas' argument is based on the idea of an essentially ordered series of causes. In such a series, the intermediate causes depend on the first cause for their causal power. Think of a hand moving a stick that moves a stone. The stick and the stone's motion rely on the hand. If the hand were to stop, so too would the stick and the stone. This is different from an accidentally ordered series, where causes might be independent of each other, like a father begetting a son who begets a grandson. If the father dies, the son and the grandson can still continue to exist. Aquinas argued that in a world we see many examples of essentially ordered causal series, and these cannot go back infinitely. There must be a first cause upon which all these depends, otherwise there would be no causes, and therefore no effects at all. This first cause, or unmoved mover, he identified with God. Importantly for Aquinas, this argument was not about proving the temporal beginning of the universe. Whether the universe had a beginning in time or was eternal was for him a question to be answered by theology or revelation, not by philosophy. The Thomistic cosmological argument is solely focused on the hierarchical nature of causation in the here and now, leading us back to a necessary first cause. It should be noted that the Thomistic cosmological argument, like all forms of the cosmological argument, have been subject of much debate and critique. Supporters argue that it provides a rational basis for the belief in God, while critics challenge its premises and logical coherence. As a Catholic, Thomas Aquinas' philosophical ideas had a significant influence on the Church's theology and teaching on the nature of God. Now, the Leibnizian, which I don't know if I'm saying right, but the Leibnizian cosmological argument, as the name suggests, was put forth by German philosopher and mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. It differs from other cosmological arguments in that it does not primarily depend on the notion of cause and effect, but instead relies on the principle of sufficient reason. Leibniz's argument begins with the premise that everything that exists has an explanation or sufficient reason for its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature, as is the case with abstract objects like numbers or propositions, or in an external cause, as is the case with contingent beings like people, trees, or planets. Leibniz argues that if we apply this principle universally, we arrive at the conclusion that the universe itself must have had a sufficient reason for its existence. The universe, being a collection of contingent beings, cannot be necessary in its own nature. so it must have had an external cause. Moreover, this cause must be necessary in its own nature, since an infinite regress of external causes would not ultimately provide a sufficient reason for the existence of the universe. This necessary being, Leibniz concludes, is God. God is defined as a necessary being whose existence is explained by the necessity of his own nature, and who is the sufficient reason for all contingent reality. Just like other cosmological arguments, the Leibnizian argument is not without its critics. Some challenge the principle of sufficient reason, or argue that the universe could be its own sufficient reason. Others question whether a necessary being must be God as traditionally conceived. Despite these criticisms, the argument continues to be a significant part of philosophical and theological discussions regarding the existence of God, especially within the Catholic Church and other Protestant denominations. The cosmological argument has a rich history within Catholic theology. Catholic theologians and philosophers have often utilized and developed versions of the cosmological argument as a way to rationalize the existence of God, particularly in an apologetic context, aiming to give a reasoned account of faith. Perhaps the most famous Catholic theologian to employ the cosmological argument was St. Thomas Aquinas, and he was a 13th century friar. We've already discussed him, but we're going to go a little bit deeper in this conversation. So his version of the cosmological argument, as we discussed, is known as 5 Ways, and it's featured in the Summa Theologica. Among these 5 ways, as mentioned, the first 3 are versions of the cosmological argument, which were the argument from motion, the argument from cause, and the argument from contingency. In each of these, Aquinas argued from observable features of the universe, motion, causality, existence of contingent beings, to the existence of a first cause or necessary being, which he identified as God. For example, in the argument from motion, he argued that since everything in motion must have been set in motion by something else, there must be an original unmoved mover. Aquinas' cosmological arguments continue to be taught and studied, not only as historical artifacts, but as a live philosophical and theological proposal. In the modern era, Catholic philosophers like Frederick Hobsbawm and Richard Swinburne have provided updated versions and defenses of the cosmological argument. While the argument's empirical basis and our experience of the world ties it to a specific scientific theories and understandings of the universe, its fundamental philosophical logic remains a topic of ongoing discussion within Catholic theological circles. These continued discussions and debates reflect the Church's commitment to the dialogue between faith and reason. While the cosmological argument isn't considered a definitive proof of God's existence, it is seen as providing rational support for belief in God. It's important to note that Catholic theology does not rely solely on such philosophical arguments for belief in God, but sees them as part of a broader fabric of faith and understanding, which includes scripture, tradition, and personal religious experience. The cosmological argument, when engaged within the context of Catholicism, can provide a substantial insight into understanding God's existence and his nature. The argument essentially points to a first cause or unmoved mover, which Catholicism identifies as God. However, while the argument can suggest the existence of God, it does not fully encapsulate the richness of the Catholic concept of God. It is a philosophical pathway leading towards a theological truth. One major connection between the cosmological argument and the Catholic conception of God is the idea of God as the creator. The cosmological argument suggests a beginning to the cosmos and thus implies a being that set this creation into motion. This aligns well with the traditional Catholic understanding of God as the creator of heaven and earth. In this view, God is not just a first cause in a temporal sense, but also the ongoing source of existence for everything that is. Moreover, the cosmological argument provides a basis for understanding God as a necessary being, that is, a being whose existence is not contingent on anything else. This complements the Catholic understanding of God as eternally self-sufficient, dependent on nothing outside of himself. However, the God that emerges from the cosmological argument, a prime mover, a first cause, a necessary being, is somewhat abstract. The argument in itself does not yield the loving personal God revealed in Jesus Christ, which is central to the Catholic faith. It doesn't provide insights into God's triune nature, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, his incarnational love for humanity, or the promises of salvation and eternal life. Therefore, while the cosmological argument is valuable in the context of natural theology, as it provides a rational foundation for belief in God, it is only one facet of the multidimensional understanding of God in Catholicism. The complete Catholic conception of God involves the revelations in Scripture, the teachings of the Church, the sacraments, and a personal experience of God's grace and presence in the life of the believer. The Catholic Church has always seen reason and faith as complementary, while philosophical arguments such as the cosmological argument having a place within a larger framework of faith and revelation. Though the cosmological argument is not explicitly laid out in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, its elements are echoed in Catholic teaching. The Catechism, for instance, refers to God as the first mover and the creator of heaven and earth in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 279. Concepts that resonate with the cosmological argument's concept of the first cause or unmoved mover is shown in these paragraphs. Furthermore, the Catechism asserts the possibility of coming to a knowledge of God's existence in a natural way. Open quotes, man faculties make him capable of coming to a knowledge of the existence of a personal God, end quotes. Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 35. This acknowledges the role of a rational philosophical argument in understanding God. In addition, the Church holds a long tradition of engaging with the cosmological argument through the works of influential thinkers like St. Thomas Aquinas. So, Aquinas' version of the cosmological argument, the Five Ways, are a cornerstone of Catholic philosophical theology. These proofs, which point to the existence of a first cause, a necessary being, and an unmoved mover, are compatible with the Church's teaching on God's nature and existence. However, it's crucial to note that while the Church affirms the value of philosophical proofs, it also asserts that God's existence and nature are ultimately known through revelation, which surpasses human reason. So, according to the Catechism, open quotes, we really can name God starting from the manifold perfections of his creatures, which are likenesses of the infinitely perfect God, even if our limited knowledge cannot exhaust the mystery. Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 42, end quotes. In summary, the cosmological arguments aligns with the Catholic Church's teachings on God as the creator and first mover, and the Church acknowledges the role of reason in recognizing God's existence. However, these philosophical understandings are viewed as a part of a larger tapestry of faith, revelation, and personal encounter with the divine. The cosmological argument, like any philosophical or theological proposition, has faced numerous criticisms. So here we're going to delve into a few of the most common critiques that have been posed against this argument. Firstly, one critique targets the premise of causality, which underlies all forms of the cosmological argument. This critique questions whether every event indeed requires a cause. It's worth noting that this argument mainly counters the causal principle as universally and necessarily true. It points out that our everyday experiences of causality may not be applicable to the origins of the universe itself. Quantum mechanics, for instance, has suggested that certain subatomic events might not have discernible causes, introducing the idea of indeterminacy. Let me try to say that again. Indeterminacy. Secondly, the cosmological argument has been criticized for its assumption that an infinite regress of causes is impossible. Critics ask why the change of causes and effects could not go back infinitely. They challenge the notion that a first cause is logically necessary. This criticism often dovetails with discussions on the nature of time and the universe itself, bringing in concepts from physics and cosmology. Thirdly, there's a critique against what is perceived as a, open quotes, leap of logic, end quotes, in the argument. Critics suggest that even if we accept the idea of a first cause or an unmoved mover, it's a substantial jump to equate this cause or mover with God, particularly the God of classical theism, which is all knowing, all powerful, and all good. And finally, the problem of evil is often raised against the cosmological argument. Critics argue that the existence of evil and suffering in the world is incompatible with the existence of a benevolent and omnipotent God, as proposed by its cosmological argument. So, this criticism ties in with a broader philosophical and theological discourse about the nature of evil and God's relationship with it, which we talked about in the previous episode. Each of these criticisms invites deeper examination that invites us to refine our understanding of the cosmological argument. Moreover, they provide opportunities for dialogue with other fields such as science, cosmology, and ethics. Catholic thinkers have not left these criticisms unanswered and have offered thoughtful responses to each of these objections. Regarding the critique on the principle of causality, the response often involves pointing to the nature of contingent beings, which are entities that do not contain within themselves the reason for their existence. Even if some events in quantum mechanics don't have a discernible cause, it's worth noting that this doesn't necessarily negate the causal principle on the macro scale or at the level of the entire universe. Besides, the quantum realm itself exists contingently, and its existence still begs an explanation. In response to the critique concerning the infinite regress of causes, Catholic thought often draws on the distinction between essentially ordered series and accidentally ordered series. The former, unlike the latter, cannot extend ad infinitum, which I'm probably saying wrong, ad infinitum, and thus must have a first member. Furthermore, if an infinite regress were possible, it would not explain existence here and now, because no amount of past causes can bring about the present if a concurrent sustaining cause is not present. As for the leap of logic criticism, Catholic theologians generally clarify that the cosmological argument does not attempt to reveal the entire nature of God, but merely his existence. The argument indicates an uncaused cause or unmoved mover, but understanding this entity as the God of classical theism involves further theological and philosophical reflection. The cosmological argument is seen as a starting point rather than an end in itself. Finally, concerning the problem of evil, Catholic thinkers have developed theodicies or defenses to reconcile the existence of a benevolent, omnipotent God with the presence of evil and suffering in the world. The free will defense is one common response, positing that evil is a result of free will misused by creatures. Additionally, there is an understanding that God allows evil only in order to bring about a greater good, a perspective that's tied to the notion of redemptive suffering. Through these responses, Catholic scholars continue to engage with criticisms, deepening the conversations surrounding the cosmological argument and its significance for belief in God. Understanding the interplay between faith and reason is central to grasping the Catholic response to the cosmological argument and its criticisms. For Catholics, faith and reason are not contradictory but complementary paths leading to the ultimate truth. Pope St. John Paul II, in his encyclical Fides et Ratio, which means faith and reason, reaffirmed that, open quotes, faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit arises to the contemplation of truth, end quotes. When considering the cosmological argument, it's important to recognize that the argument itself falls into the realm of reason. It is a philosophical argument that seeks to demonstrate God's existence through logical reasoning from observable facts about the universe. It doesn't require faith to understand or accept, but operates within the domain of natural theology, using reason and experience to infer the existence of God. However, the complete understanding of God as revealed in Jesus Christ does require faith. Faith in the Catholic perspective enriches and deepens the insights gained through reason. While reason can point to the existence of a first mover or first cause or an unmoved mover, faith allows believers to know this entity as a personal and loving God who cares about his creation. In dealing with criticisms of the cosmological argument, the harmony of faith and reason continues to be apparent. Reason is used to clarify misconceptions, to defend the argument's premises, and to explain theological concepts. At the same time, faith provides the lens through which Catholics understand the meaning and implications of these reasoned responses. For example, in discussing the problem of evil, reason is used to formulate the free will defense and explore the notion of a greater good arising from evil. However, it is through faith that Catholics find comfort and hope in these explanations, trusting in the wisdom and goodness of God, even in the face of suffering. Thus, in the Catholic worldview, faith and reason work hand in hand in the dialogue surrounding the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument, with its roots in ancient history and its refinement in medieval theology, continues to be a significant player in contemporary discussions about the existence of God. In a world where scientific discovery and technological advancement often seem to push against traditional religious beliefs, the cosmological argument provides a bridge between observable empirical reality and metaphysical claims about existence. In the realm of apologetics, the cosmological argument serves as a tool for engaging with skeptics and atheists. Philosophers and theologians use variants of this argument to demonstrate the reasonableness of belief in God. For example, William Lane Craig has extensively utilized and defended the Kalam cosmological argument in public debates and scholarly work, attempting to show that the existence of the universe requires a cause outside of itself. Simultaneously, the cosmological argument has provoked significant responses from those who question or reject its conclusions. Critics, including physicists, philosophers, and atheist advocates, have proposed alternative explanations for the origin and nature of the universe that do not involve a necessary being. These debates have given rise to rich discourse about the nature of causality, time, and existence itself. So, despite its ancient roots, the cosmological argument also interacts with modern scientific theories such as the Big Bang Theory and quantum physics. The apparent fine tuning of the universe, for instance, is often cited in discussions around the teleological argument, a related argument for the existence of God based on a perceived design in the universe. Whether it's being used to justify belief in God or being challenged by new theoretical propositions, the cosmological argument continues to be a key component of a contemporary dialogue about the existence of God. In the Catholic context, the cosmological argument maintains its importance not only as a means of dialogue with non believers, but also as a way for believers to deepen their understanding of God and the universe. Its exploration allows for a richer comprehension of why God is not just a possible reality, but a necessary one. Engaging in a fruitful dialogue about the cosmological argument with non-believers requires a combination of philosophical understanding, respect for different viewpoints, and clear communication strategies. It's important to remember that these discussions are not about winning an argument, but rather about fostering mutual understanding and exploration of life's deepest questions. Start by grounding the discussion in mutual respect and shared quest for truth. Acknowledge that questions about the existence of God and the nature of the universe are among the most profound and challenging that humans can ask. Emphasize that your aim is to explore these questions together, not to convert the other person. Secondly, clarify the terms of the discussion. The cosmological argument is philosophical, not scientific. So ensure that both you and the person you are conversing with understand this distinction. This isn't about proving God in the same way one might prove a scientific theory, but about examining the nature of existence and causality and what might be reasonably inferred from this. Remember, present the cosmological argument in a clear and understandable way, using accessible examples where possible. Explain the difference between a necessary being and a contingent being, and why the existence of the universe suggests a necessary cause. Discuss the various forms of the cosmological argument from Aquinas to Leibniz, and explore how these philosophical ideas have developed over the centuries. Then respond to objections and criticisms with grace and thoughtfulness. Common criticisms might include the assertion that the universe could be infinite or self-causing, or questions about what caused God. Be prepared for these objections and be ready to provide thoughtful responses that uphold the principles of the cosmological argument while respecting the validity of questioning and doubt. Finally, connect the cosmological argument back to the Catholic understanding of God. Explain how the philosophical concept of a necessary, non-contingent being aligns with the Christian understanding of a transcendent, eternal God. This is an opportunity to introduce other aspects of Catholic theology, such as the concept of God as a loving creator who invites us into a personal relationship. And ultimately, conversations about the cosmological argument with non-believers provide an opportunity for deep and meaningful dialogue about the nature of the universe and our place within it. They challenge us to think deeply about our beliefs and to engage with different perspectives in a spirit of curiosity and respect. Now, while the cosmological argument is primarily a philosophical tool used to reason about the existence of a higher power, it can also play a significant role in personal faith and spirituality. The value of these arguments in a religious context often lies not just in their logical conclusions, but in the broader questions they inspire us to ask about the nature of the universe and our place within it. In personal faith, the cosmological argument can serve as a foundation for a sense of wonder and awe towards the universe. The concept that every contingent being or event we experience in the world points to a necessary being or first cause can lead to a profound appreciation for the mystery and grandeur of existence. It encourages a sense of humility, a recognition of our smallness within the vast web of existence, while simultaneously affirming the intrinsic meaning and purpose that flows from the universe brought into being by a conscious, intentional creator. In the terms of spirituality, the cosmological arguments invites us into a deeper contemplation of the nature of God. If God is the uncaused cause, the necessary being upon which all these depends, what does that say about the nature of God? This contemplative process can deepen our understanding of God as transcendent, yet intimately connected with all of this existence, fostering a more intimate and personal relationship with the divine. Moreover, the cosmological argument provides a rational underpinning to the faith that can be especially valuable in times of doubt or questioning. Knowing that one's belief in God is supported by centuries of philosophical thought that can be comforting and grounding. It reminds us that faith and reason are not opposed, but rather two complementary ways of seeking truth. Finally, engaging with the cosmological argument can deepen our compassion and respect for others, especially those with different beliefs. Recognizing the complexity of these philosophical questions underscores the legitimacy of doubt and the value of ongoing search for truth. This can foster a greater openness to dialogue, a deeper commitment to understanding others' perspectives, and a more inclusive and welcoming expression of faith. So, guys, as we reach the end of this episode, we hope that our exploration of the cosmological argument has not only deepened your understanding of this significant philosophical proposition, but also sparked reflections on your personal faith and the awe-inspiring nature of the universe. The cosmological argument, whether one fully agrees with it or not, prompts us to consider the profound mysteries of existence and our place within the grand scheme of things. We have journeyed from the foundations of the argument as laid out by Aristotle and Aquinas through its various interpretations like the Kalam, Thomistic, and Leibnizian arguments, and examined how it has been incorporated into the teachings of the Catholic Church. We have considered common criticisms and Catholic responses to these criticisms, shedding light on the ever-present interplay between faith and reason. While it's true that some philosophical and theological concepts can be complex, engaging with them can enrich our spiritual lives, reaffirm our faith, and open our hearts to meaningful dialogue with others, regardless of their beliefs. As we continue to grapple with questions about God's existence, we remember that the journey of faith is not a solitary endeavor, but a shared voyage filled with discovery, wonder, and mutual respect. So, in our next episode, we'll delve a little deeper into the realm of faith and reason, continuing to explore how they intersect and influence our understanding of the divine. Until then, we encourage you to ponder the ideas discussed today and welcome any questions or reflections you may have. I want to thank you for joining us on this intellectual and spiritual adventure in the That One Catholic podcast. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep the faith. Goodbye, and God bless.